Installing a half-mortise lock by hand is a tricky affair. It requires really precise layout and careful chiseling to get a perfect fit. And by the way, it requires a lot of time too. So when I was teaching a tool chest class, it required not one, but 3 locks per chest. For that, I figured I needed to come out with a little quicker way to do it. A half-mortise lock, or one that is inset into the back of a door or drawer, requires 3 components. It needs a deep mortise for the body of the lock, a shallow mortise for the plate, and one for the selvage. That's a portion of the plate that curls over along the top edge. And of course, we need a keyhole as well. What I came up with are a set of 3 jigs to handle all those tasks really quickly and really precisely. The jigs are all made from 1/2-inch plywood and are actually built around the lock itself. The idea here is choose the lock you want and build the jigs to fit. The first jig is a drilling guide for establishing the keyhole. The other 2 jigs are routing jigs for the lock body mortise and the plate and selvage mortise. Now, in addition to the jigs, you'll need a router set up with a bearing guided straight bit, a couple drill bits, some layout tools, and a chisel. That's it. Let me show you how to do it. The first step is to mark a center line on the drawer front. That's going to guide the placement for all of the jigs. Go ahead and start with the drilling jig. Align it to the center line and clamp it in place. Chuck up a 1/4-inch bit for the big hole and an 1/8-inch bit for the smaller hole. You only need to drill about halfway through the drawer front. Go ahead and pull the jig off, grab a knife and a square, and connect some lines from either side of the smaller hole up to the bigger hole. Grab a 1/2-inch chisel and chisel the waste between them. You can square up the bottom, and if the slot is slightly off-center of the big hole, go ahead and widen it as much as you need to. Throw the key in just to make sure that it's fitting. Now clamp the lock body jig in place, again aligning it with the center line on the drawer front. And we can break out the router. I'm using a 1/4-inch bit, so I'll have to take 2 passes here. The first pass, the bearing is riding on the jig itself. The second pass, set deeper, the bearing is actually riding along the pre-routed surface. Once you're done routing to full depth, leave the jig in place and use it as a guide for squaring up the corners with a chisel. Once that's done, it's time for the lock plate jig. For this, we're setting the depth of the bit to the jig plus the thickness of the lock plate. Again, align it with the center line, clamp it in place. Start by routing the lock plate on the back surface, and then tilt the router 90 degrees, run it along the front face for the selvage. Leave it in place, square up the corners, and you're almost done. There's one final bit of housekeeping to take care of. Most lock plates have a rounded 90-degree bend to make the selvage. To accommodate the rounded inside corner, use a chisel to cut a slight chamfer along the edge of the shallow mortise where the selvage folds over. The final test is easy. Let's throw the lock in there and see if the key fits. To learn how to build the jigs, check out the article in Fine Woodworking issue 245.